about the territory of dignity in Kyiv, I give the floor to Vasyl Gatsko, who is head of the DemAliance faction at Kyiv City Council, and Olena Peday, who's head of the NGO DemAliance Help, and Oleksiy Krasnoshchokov, head of the NGO Pidmoga.Info.
Друзі, всім доброго дня.
Hello, everybody. Of course, the attention of the Ukrainian society is now glued to the events in the east. I came back from the Baltsevo bridgehead on Monday. I saw with my own eyes how the ceasefire regime started and then ended in a couple of hours. That was supposed to be all-embracing, but I hope that our command does control the situation. I want to draw your attention to the fact that a year ago in the capital of Ukraine, the dramatic events of the Revolution of Dignity were taking place, for which we paid a high price, but which made possible to overthrow the regime of Yanukovych. Many people were killed on Maidan in Institutska Street, in this downtown part of our city, and many people sustained heavy wounds, and of course their property was damaged or lost. Now, many of them cannot commemorate the memory of the fallen and remember the events together with us at Maidan and in the center of Kyiv. And the reason is very simple. Kyiv is not comfortable for people who have lower mobility, and we today launch an initiative that pertains to the appearance in the capital of Ukraine of the first barrier-free space. I want to share my impressions. 2 years ago I was to Sweden, in particular the Congress of our partners, one of the political parties in Sweden. We went to Stockholm and to Karlstad where the event took place, and I was very much surprised when I saw that people of old age and people with prams and people with special needs, I met them everywhere, at restaurants, in the streets, at the Congress, and I understood then how the situation is different from the situation in Kyiv and in Ukraine. This does not mean that we do not have people with special needs. They are here, but they do not have an opportunity to live to the full extent. You know, my father got a trauma at a coal mine, and until his death, he spent his life in a wheelchair. And I remember the times when we were going to the court trying to receive a compensation from the state, which was provided for by the law anyway, and some social payments. And every trip to the court for us was a huge event with a lot of problems of discomfort. And I must tell you that my father left this life without the corresponding court decision. We understand that a great number of people meet similar complications in Kyiv and everywhere in Ukraine. We would like to rectify the situation, and we start doing this from the central part of the city. Recently, we have adopted a budget for the city in Kyiv. Very regrettably, there are no clear-cut expenditure for a barrier-free space in the capital, but we were able to pressurize Kyiv officials, and this year money 2 million hryvnia will be allocated, in particular to the Kyiv car road administration, to accordingly organize the roads in the central part of the city. And we, of course, will apply a lot of efforts so that our next anniversary of the Revolution of Dignity, we may mark and we may commemorate the fallen and remember the dramatic events of 2013 and 2014 without barriers, at least in the central part of the city. So what we are going to do in this case this year, next year, about our initiative of barrier-free territory of dignity, we'll talk in more detail, and I pass the floor to Olena Peday, who is head of the NGO DemAliance, one of curators of this initiative.
Thank you, Vasyl. Thank you, friends. DemAliance helps our military and their families. That is why every day we see how it is difficult for our warriors, for our wounded servicemen to move around Kyiv. Very few of them today will be able to come to Maidan and lay flowers. That is not dignant. The lack of the norms of universal design is discrimination. We cannot allow this to be happening. We're people who act. We went to the Department of Architecture with our proposal this year to make Krasnoshchokov barrier-free. And because now there's the international competition going on, territory of dignity, and on the 1st of March, the architectural projects will be, the time for receiving architectural projects expires, so we agreed to start cooperation, and we'll be controlling all the projects which will be selected for the finals. They should correspond to all the norms of contemporary design. After the finalists are selected, the public hearings will be held. This work will continue till May, and we will also participate in that. Then, starting from summer, we hope that we will start working on making the territory of dignity barrier-free, so that the next anniversary is marked in the barrier-free zone. Our team, Krasnoshchokov, he knows how difficult it is for a person who's not really mobile to move around Krasnoshchokov. I would like him to give some figures on that. Thank you, Olena. Again, I would like to repeat that we, together with our partners from Democratic Alliance, we're starting the project on Kyiv becoming the zone which will be barrier-free, obstacle-free. The territory of dignity is just the beginning. As the head of organization Pidmoga.Info, which is working on the problems of disabled people, we understand it very well. But what we mean is the possibility to use such things as public transportation, public offices, cafes, commercial institutions, banks, the groups which are not very mobile, they cannot live a full-fledged life and make such simple things similar to what we are doing every day. These are not just disabled people. Every one of us becomes part of this group, the group which is not mobile. These are elderly people, people with children, those who had some traumas, and now, because of the events in the East, this group includes also those people who suffered in ATO zone, and so we have to ensure for them a free movement around the city and use all the services. According to the international report of World Health Organization, about 15% of the world population has some disabilities. In Ukraine, we have 2.8 million people with disability. Out of them, 114,000 children, a couple million children, 500,000 parents with babies in prams, and 14,000 people with temporary complications of health. The target group is very big, millions of people. The fact that we do not see them every day in the streets does not mean that they do not exist. That means that they have no access to services which we're used to. According to the United Nations data, we will have 30-35% of people of elderly age. In Ukraine, we have already 40% of them, and that figure will just be growing. And now our objective is to start the project from the territory of dignity to control such processes as the construction of new buildings, to stimulate business, to make their buildings accessible for people with low mobility. Then the public transportation is also to be to become accessible for these groups of people. This is something that is taking place in the world for 20 years, and we believe that Ukraine has to start working in that. Also, we are analyzing all the drawbacks, and will start to introduce this project in Kyiv, and we would like to invite all the interested organizations to join us in that work. Any questions to the speakers? Larissa Baida from newspaper Without Barriers. The National Assembly of Disabled People of Ukraine has been working for more than 10 years on the issue of obstacle-free space. First of all, the public cannot control any amendments to the legislation, so we will not be able, and you will not be able, to control the construction of new houses or purchase of new trolleybuses, for example. After the Revolution of Dignity, Krasnoshchokov was reconstructed, and that was done without observing all the state construction norms. Now 2 million are allocated for infrastructure. How will you be controlling that the money are used for this purpose? How will you achieve that objective of making Krasnoshchokov a barrier or obstacle-free zone? I would like to suggest to you, if you have any problems with getting information, or the problems with the exercising control over the expenditures and procurements in the capital, then let us, together with the DemAliance, let's join our efforts, because we have affection in the Kyiv Council. We have enough influence now to exercise such control. And the same is true talking about the project and the money which will be allocated, this 2 million which will be allocated for roads. That is just small part which is needed so that Kyiv becomes obstacle-free. Now, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that our task today, our task as the citizens, is to do everything possible so that Klitschko and the city authorities have political will to organize in Kyiv the first barrier-free or obstacles-free zone. The authorities of the city have all the instruments to do it so that all the norms are observed. Some of the biggest construction companies are communal enterprises, or enterprises where the city has a share, Kyiv Miskbud, Zhitlobud, and so on. Many objects are constructed by communal enterprises. Yeah, last year they were commissioned without observing all the state norms, but there is political instrument today to observe all these norms. If the city authorities have political will and if they do not provide the land plots to those who do not observe the norms, can that influence? I am sure this can. If they are not forgiven, that this will influence. Klitschko has all the instruments needed to influence the situation so that in Kyiv we have the first barrier-free space. And we will put all the efforts possible, we'll use all our influence, and with the support of NGOs, of target groups, we will try to get this political will implemented. I know that in the city authorities, even now, there are so many corruptionists, but do not know of a single one of them who can oppose this first obstacles-free area where the heroes of ATO, people who are fighting for the rights and freedoms of Ukraine, will be present. There are not people who could oppose that. Channel 5. To continue the topic, will there be any fines introduced against those businessmen who will be constructing their objects without observing all these requirements that all existed before? They were constructing, but with violations. The person in a wheelchair could not get anywhere. Will there be? Will these requirements become stricter? And we're interested in statistical information on Kyiv and Kyiv Oblast. How many people are there with disabilities? When we're talking about requirements to construction business, we have to put the same requirements to Kyiv authorities, because in the Department of Architecture, which had to take care of the comfort, tolerance in the capital, in the architecture of the capital, you cannot get there because they don't have this friendly space for a person with disability. Even in the Department of Architecture, let's talk wider, the Ministry of Public Health, the same situation. There are many educational institutions, medical institutions, state institutions, which do not have the access, obstacle-free access for this category of people. So our task, our priority task, and our priority mission is to force the city to observe the law. Second, communal enterprises which are constructing so many objects in the capital and commission so many objects. And also we have a political instrument today to influence the violators. These are land plots. Even without fines, which have never been applied in the capital, we can do something in Kyiv. And Oleksiy maybe will be more precise. In Kyiv, I believe about 50,000 people with disabilities live in Kyiv, but this issue of barrier-free zone is something that concerns everyone, because the target groups are not just people who are limited in their capacities, but families. For example, even in the central part of Kyiv, in Krasnoshchokov, you will not see many parents with small children, with babies in prams, because it's impossible to get here. To move along Krasnoshchokov is very complicated. The elderly people, same way. So we're talking about creating an oasis in the capital, the oasis of the comfort. And because the Kyiv authorities are now starting to create this memorial related to the events of the last year, we believe that it's time, proper time to think not just about those events, but to create in Kyiv the first very comfortable public space. Another question. Have you tried those who are in a wheelchair? How can they get to the store? Have you been trying to do that, to get to this Department of Architecture? Do you have like the list of all these places where such people would need to have access? I will give the floor to Oleksiy. He could share that. And the second part is very brief. There are passports of the central parts of the capital, Krasnoshchokov, Maidan, where we have made inventory of all the problems that exist. Answering your question, I would like to mention, yeah, we do have such passports. We had public hearings on how to implement all that. In different streets of Kyiv, in the Department of Municipal Construction, we found support. They are ready to provide all this data. For half a year, we've had this discussion on how to better put all these means so that people get access to all the buildings. We do have the passports of all the streets, and continuing discussions with the public organizations, with the Department of Architecture. We will probably improve that list, but we have the basic list already. Thank you. We hope that we will remove these obstacles. Our next briefing will take place in a few minutes. Colonel Lysenko.